First at 4:30, a U.S. military wife from Australia is sharing her story after she was detained by border officials at the Honolulu airport.
Our Annalisa Burgos spoke to her about what she's calling the holiday from hell.
Last Sunday, 25-year-old Nicole Sirocos was looking forward to a 3-week vacation in Honolulu with her mom.
That's where my mother and father had their honeymoon, so it held a very sentimental place in her heart.
It was Sirocos' third visit to see her husband Matt, a U.S. Army lieutenant stationed on Oahu. The newlyweds married last December. She said she hadn't had issues before, but this time U.S. border officials at Honolulu airport flagged her for additional screening.
He went from completely composed to just yelling at the top of his lungs, telling my mother to go stand at the back of the line and to, excuse my language, shut up. So I automatically started crying because that was my first response.
Sirocco said they were taken to a holding room, their bags and phones were searched, and they were asked a slew of questions. Everything from her work as a former police officer to whether her tattoos were gang-related to her marriage to an American.
When I did say that I was married to somebody in the U.S. Army, the officers laughed at me. They thought it was quite comical. I don't know whether they thought I was telling the truth or not. They kept telling me that I had too many clothes in my suitcase. So because of that, they assumed that I was going to overstay my visa.
Sirocos was subject to more screening. Her fingerprints and a DNA swab of her mouth were taken, while her mother was free to go. Her heart sunk when officials told her she would be declined entry to the U.S. and deported back to Australia the next day.
And he said, so basically what is going to happen is we're going to send you to a prison overnight where you'll stay.
Use the word prison?
Prison. Yes.
Not detention center, but a
Not
prison.
Detention center, he said prison. And I automatically I started crying again. Because when you think prison, you think big time criminals. I don't know who I'm being housed with.
Sirocco said officials conducted a body cavity search, walked her through the airport in handcuffs, and drove her to the federal detention center.
They stated, no, you're not under arrest. You haven't done anything wrong and you will be facing no criminal charges. So I was very confused as to why this was all happening.
At the prison, Sirocos was strip searched and detained with women who had been convicted of murder and drug offenses. Because she had missed the cutoff for dinner, she was not given food. At no point was she allowed to call her husband or mother.
And I found that so absurd because if I'm going to be there overnight, my right, just as a human being, should be to contact at least one person.
After a sleepless night, she was brought back to the airport the next morning, where her mother joined her. Only then was she offered a phone call with her husband.
I think we were both just very emotional. We hadn't spoken to each other in 24 hours. He didn't know where I was or whether I was safe. It's not only myself, it's my mother and my husband that also had to endure that pain. You know, my husband being a current serving member, to serve his country and to be treated in that way, I find very disgusting.
Sirocos' husband is now in Sydney with his wife. She says she wants people to know the risks of traveling to the U.S. now.
It's made it physically impossible for me to even ever enter the United States ever again.
What does that mean for your marriage?
At the time, I felt like my world came crashing down. I felt like my marriage was over when they told me that. And that's something that they've taken away from me as well.
Immigration attorneys say detainees are entitled to a phone call if they are held for several hours. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says they're working on a statement for our story. They did say that decisions on entry are not taken lightly and many factors are considered. Annalisa Burgos, Hawaii News Now.